Pixar has been synonymous with adult animation for... No, wait, let's bring that back. Pixar has been synonymous with mature animation for quite a while now. Some even consider them the goats of the industry who could do no wrong. Kinda like their brother studio under Disney that has since fallen to the same fate. That said, I've always had long-standing issues with the narratives that are painted by the mainstream channels and media because I'm rebellious like that, but those views then get co-opted by the masses who then parrot those opinions without interrogating them for themselves. Respectfully, of course, because I know there are a lot of independent thinkers out there who also loved Pixar, but I think it's fair to say that they are not the vocal majority. On the other extreme end of the spectrum, I watched and enjoyed the Mario animated movie. Just a fun day at the movies, but everyone who listens to the critics knows that they were not very impressed. Some actually hated it, to be honest, because the audience was not left drenched in tears or thrown into an existential crisis like the cartoon medium was invented to do. I mean, who needs to watch The Green Mile when you can be left just as miserable in all the colors of the rainbow? Newsflash to the professional critics. Being dead inside does not make you the arbiter of quality in a medium that is largely targeted at kids and people who enjoy a little sunshine in their lives. But this is nothing new because I've noticed this trend over a number of years. It's just that Mario had all the clout of being a household name, plus the added boost of having one of the strongest presences in gaming, so it was able to crush the narrative and make bank at the movies. But the other movies that didn't have as many facets of appeal were not so lucky. And I'll not blame Pixar for this, but I will say that a lot of joyless movie critics and pop culture commentators have used the Pixar films as the foundation from which they measure all other animated films. You are either Pixar elite or you're walking the streets in rags and open to everyone's judgment and ridicule. Forget about entertaining the masses, your only goal is to enter the fancy hoity-toity Oscars movie club. Do I sound salty? Is that salt? We don't care about the Oscars anyway. But the thing I'll say about Pixar films and critics is, Pixar set expectations of what their movies are, so I don't mind them comparing Pixar against Pixar, because they created that brand for themselves. But even still, I find some of the narratives on their less enjoyed films to be very dishonest. Let's take Cars for example. The first Cars film got a lot of criticism for being one of the earlier Pixar films that were considered as too immature for adults, but when you think about the moral of the film, several live-action films have done the same to great acclaim. It's basically a sports movie, but even the first Thor film was a similar story about the hero learning humility through a humbling experience that they got thrust into against their will. Critics and commentators still don't understand why Cars is such an immensely popular franchise, even though the answer is right there in front of them. On the flip side, Up and Inside Out were two films that I never finished watching. And we can throw Wall-E in there as well. They were either bringing my mood down or addressing themes that I do not find entertaining in the slightest. It's already a battle to get me to sit down and watch a film whose premise I'm not familiar with, so if you want to make the process of actually watching the film equally taxing, you will lose me immediately. I know people who love those films and there is a place for all these stories in the medium of animation, but I will completely oppose the notion that they should be the animation standard. I was initially going to review Smurfs: The Lost Village, but when I looked at the online consensus on that film, I was really surprised. I then went and looked at two other animated movies that I really enjoyed that came out the year prior in 2016, and I saw the same thing happening. While it's easy to say that you should not care what other people think as long as you enjoy the movie yourself, which is fair, this mentality ends up informing future trends. The fact that The Lost Village was even being compared to those horrendous live-action films upset me quite a bit, I'm not gonna lie. If this was a Pixar film, the reviewers would suddenly discover that the story was a lot deeper than what they claimed in their reviews. Let's take a crack at what some phony reviewer would say if Pixar made Smurfs: The Lost Village. Smurfette has a loss of identity which is very clearly explained from the beginning of the film, and as sweet and positive as she is, the feeling was obviously very alienating, which is an experience that a lot of adults can identify with. Everyone is trying to find their purpose and not everyone ever does. Smurfette goes out on a journey to find out who she really is, and a couple of well-selected Smurfs tag along on her adventure to bring out important aspects of her personality. The Smurfs included brainy, hefty, and clumsy. all with completely opposing approaches to problem solving, which made for a very engaging adventure. The exploration of purpose and destiny in this was done masterfully. Smurfette was a good example of creating an endearing and capable female protagonist, which a lot of modern entertainment properties have not been capable of successfully executing, despite their best attempts. The usual antagonist Gargamel and his pets provided very capable foils, thematically dark moments, and lots of genuine laugh-out-loud humor. Visually, the movie is a joy to look at and very beautifully animated. It had some really cool ideas for anyone who loves fantasy and adventure, which are objectively very creative. The film is so easy to get into, which, as I mentioned earlier, is something that I value with my very busy schedule. There is very little effort required when approaching the film. You don't have to be in any frame of mind to dive in, you just do it. Even the slapstick elements of the film were very restrained. They were either funny or pushed the plot forward, and the movie did not stop to service pointless gags, so I will really push back on the narrative that the movie was juvenile. Even in this scene where clumsy Smurf was trying to get rid of this egg that Gargamel tossed to him, he suffered a glitch in his clumsiness, where he became inconveniently graceful and could not get rid of it. My goodness, talk about subversion. This was a very funny and clever subversive trick, and they kept playing with his clumsiness all through the film in very unique ways. There was also a gag with Nosy Smurf that was so funny. And thank goodness they never overplayed it. They sprinkled it in just the right amount.
Well, what's going on over there?
Scientific history.
Oh, what's going on in here?
None of your business, Nosy.
Well, all right. Oh. What's going on in here? Well, all right.
The dialogue writing, oh my goodness, it was very warm and engaging, which contributed to very likable characters. And just in general, on their little adventure, there were just a couple of characters that really cared for each other and fostered a united spirit and pulled together in the spirit of unity so that they could get to the end together. Even though Hefty and Brainy were at odds due to their brash versus methodical approaches, they had the same goal and they were not unnecessarily antagonistic. How does that sound for a review? I'll bet you things would have flipped just like that if Smurfs The Lost Village had Pixar under the title card. We have become so cynical as a society. Wholesome content is seen to be childish, and the fact that all these characters were so cute was clearly used against the film overall, in spite of its mature writing and a couple of silly adult jokes.
Wow, have you ever seen something so beautiful?
Every day, Smurfette. Every day.
Don't be weird. I pick this lock.
Yeah?
We swing to that shelf.
Yeah?
Pick up something heavy.
Yeah?
And use it to kill the bird.
Yeah!
What?
Wait.
It's time to rock the cage.
Don't be weird.
And on that note of visual appeal, I always hated those live-action versions of the Smurfs, because beyond the story, the Smurfs themselves were kinda ugly, nightmarish, plastic clay-looking creatures. I don't even like looking at them, ugh. But The Lost Village was just quality. I don't even know how you can watch this scene where Gargamel was supposed to be drowning and not laugh out loud at all his ad-libs, regardless of how old you are. The only thing I'll give you is that the music selection could have been better, but it's a really fun film in spite of that, and it stayed clear of so many lazy tropes, while at the same time providing satisfying scenes between all the characters. If any of the writers of this film sees my video, you have my props. I saw what you were going for and you nailed it. I'd also touch lightly on Rock Dog from 2016, but I'd just be saying the same thing. The movie was slightly generic, but it was fun and very relatable to me personally. Depending on how deeply you want to go, Rock Dog was about this young Tibetan Mastiff whose father wanted him to follow in his footsteps, but he had dreams of his own. The dog just wanted to rock. While the father's job as a guard was very important to the village and following the family tradition was expected with good reason, the son's dreams were also valid, and the movie was able to bring those two complex concepts together in a very respectable way. I don't care what anyone says, it totally worked. I'm an African artist after all, so I can definitely identify with the struggle to follow your own path that your parents want to protect you from. The movie is admittedly not as tight as it could be, but it had a very relatable plot that delivered on the premise with a very satisfactory conclusion. There's all this talk about the East and the West clashing in the movie because it was apparently based on a Chinese graphic novel but created with a Western lens, but who really cares? The animation quality was quite good and the movie was entertaining. It flopped really hard at the box office because releasing this in the same year as Zootopia was never going to do it any favors, but I just found out that there was a part 2 and apparently a part 3, so something seems to have gone right for them. I'm yet to watch the sequels, but based on this first film, I will definitely check them out. If you've seen my previous videos, I'm really not saying anything super new here. We don't need depressing or tear-inducing animated movies to consider them quality. Smurfs: The Lost Village and Rock Dog are pretty good films in spite of what the critics might tell you, and you should check them out if you haven't already. I at least guarantee that you'll have a less intense experience than Inside Out or Up, and you will laugh. Pixar used to be cool and all, but let's not act like they're the only way to do animation. Let me know how you feel about all these animated movies and I will see you in the next one. Peace.
Let's all go have some fun.
Yeah!
Pizza!
Smurfboarding!
Smurfboarding!